Hi everyone, thank you for coming. This is the last talk of the day, so thank you for being here. I'm sure everyone's hungry. So this presentation is called You're Not as Safe as You Think, Clearing Up Common Security Misconceptions. So in addition to hitting the character limit for session titles, we're going to be looking at a few of these common security myths and sort of false statements that I've heard over the years in security. Some of them are just straight up wrong. Others are just, a little misconstrued. You don't get as much protection as you might think. We'll go ahead and talk about it. We're going to look at what the myths do wrong and what they do right. So here's the obligatory who I am. I'm from Hagerstown, Maryland. I'm nearby. I like web applications and looking at infrastructure, things like that. I work for Independent Security Evaluators. We're a security consultancy here in Baltimore. We do white box, black box, all kinds of assessments. We like application security, so a lot of what I'm talking about today is going to be about application security and web applications in particular. And we're right next door at the IoT Village. If you want to stop by tomorrow, we'll be there if I can answer any questions for you. All right, so here are some of the topics we're going to look at today. We're going to look at package managers. We're going to look at HTTPS. We're going to look at server-side encryption or encryption at rest. We're going to look at passwords, and then a couple quick miscellaneous topics at the end. All right, so first myth, software from a package manager is safe. So I'm going to start this off right off the bat. All these myths are very good things. You should probably use most of them. Just be sure you're not thinking you're getting protections that you don't. So when I say package managers, we're looking at things that are language specific, like NPM or pip. These are things that install libraries for programming languages. We're also looking at things that are for operating systems, like apt or DNF. Those install packages on your OS. And we're also looking at application stores used by mobile OSs. Things like the Play Store, the Apple App Store, Microsoft Store, whatever. So what do? They install software, right? So they install it, and they usually get the software from some central repository that'll have mirrors, whatever. And how does the software get there? Well, it depends. Sometimes the software is uploaded by the actual developers. Sometimes it'll be by the store owners themselves. Sometimes just some random guy on the street. Who knows? But it gets up there. And then what are some of the problems we can see from this? So obviously there's a repository, so that's a nice central target that attackers might want to get. And this sort of thing does happen. Again, I want to point out that I like package managers. I use them. They're good things. But you have to remember the risks. So did the package repository get hacked? Things like that. Are the packages signed? Does the package manager on the client verify the signatures of these things? If the package is up on there and it gets replaced with malware, can we detect that? That sort of thing. How does the software actually get up there? Can package uploaders put malware in the package to begin with? Is someone reviewing the packages? Things like Google Play, we see this a lot with the Android apps with the malware in it. I use an Android phone, but it's okay. We also hear about Node has this sort of issue before. I'm not a big fan of JavaScript, so I pick on Node a little bit, but that's okay. So, package managers, again, they can be safe, but they have to come from a source you trust. We want to make sure malware does not get in to begin with. If malware gets put in there at some point, we want to detect that. We want to make sure, what else? What about how the packages get to the client? We want to use secure protocols, TLS. We want HTTPS, something like that. Protocol that gives you integrity and confidentiality. So the next one, I don't know if you guys can see that, but I have a green padlock next to my URL. That means my website is secure. So HTTPS, this is the thing that encrypts your network traffic between your client to the server. This is a very nice technology. Everyone should probably be using it these days because of free certificates and things like that. But HTTPS does not make your website secure in the sense that your web application itself is going to be secure. You can still be vulnerable to things like cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, SQL injection, and HTTPS is not going to stop those types of attacks. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at, encryption at rest, or server-side encryption. This is what happens when your when your data on your disk is encrypted, so you can't just plug in your hard drive in someone else's computer and read the files off of that. So this is something that probably everyone with a mobile device should be using, maybe using by default, depends on your OS. This is good stuff, but it's important to recognize that this is encryption at rest. So the threat model is more physical access at this point. So for like a web server, the server could be in like a locked data center, and in particular, oftentimes it's in like, say, an AWS cloud facility. So I don't have burglary statistics for AWS, but I assume they're pretty low, so I don't think theft is a big deal there. But again, encryption at rest. This is good stuff. You should use this. And it's really nice when your server is turned off and your data is actually at rest. However, it does not really help when an attacker is actually attacking a web application and is pulling off all your data using something like SQL injection. So again, we need to consider the protection that the technology gives you and the downfalls it has. So in this case, encryption at rest, your data is at rest, it's good. If it's being SQL injected, it's not good. You can't hack me. I have a strong password. So I like this one. I giggled a lot when I came up with that one. So good passwords. Everyone should use good passwords. I'm not saying don't use good passwords, but it's important to remember what a good password actually gives you. Mainly, it's protection at the login page. And I've talked about this a little bit before, but after you log in, you can still be vulnerable to things like cross-site request forgery, cross-site scripting. These web application vulnerabilities will get you no matter how good your password is. So telling your mother to always use a good password, telling your dad to always use a good password, it doesn't matter because they can still get hacked if they're doing things on bad sites. But again, please use good passwords. We should also consider the fact that it's not always on the user to have all the burden of security placed on the users. Web app developers should do things like, rate limit the login page. They should do things like store the password securely, which means don't store the password, store password hashes, salted password hashes, and that sort of thing. So again, use strong passwords, make sure they're random, try to use different ones for every site. Password managers help with this sort of thing, but make sure you have a good password manager. And again, remember that these are not going to stop web application level vulnerabilities. And then we're going to close up here with a couple miscellaneous topics. Up-to-date software makes you more secure. So this is kind of important because right next door we have about like 25, or so devices in the IoT village, and they all have firmware updates and things like that. And they might be very secure when they're fully up-to-date, in the sense that known exploits will not work on them. However, it is my job, and like many other people's job, to go to work every day and find exploits in up-to-date software. 0 days do exist. We hear about them all the time. So again, it's important to remember that up-to-date software will keep you safe from known vulnerabilities, but it is not going to stop a targeted hacker trying to get into your system. And then antivirus. So antivirus is kind of a touchy subject for some people. Some people like this, some people don't. I have seen a lot of laptops given to me over the years, and they're, clearly covered in malware, but the antivirus says it's fine. It says you need to renew your Norton subscription, things like that. I tend to think these things are more harm than good in a lot of cases, but they do have their places. In particular, we're looking at things built in the operating system tend to be better. They won't use up all your resources, and they might do a better job in general. We have to be somewhat wary of antiviruses. Some of these things are huge software suites. They might have like web applications, and then you have all those issues that we've been talking about. They're running with high privileges. Sometimes these are like, kernel level modules running. So if there's an issue there, you could lose all sorts of data from that. In some cases, the antivirus might be worse than some of the malware that they claim to protect. They do have a place. Antivirus is, say, good in an example of you have an enterprise file server, you want to make sure the file's uploaded, it don't have viruses, things like that. All right, this was fast. All right, so to wrap things up, We need to remember that security isn't something that you can fix with one neat trick. If you see a blog somewhere that says, make your site secure with one neat trick, they're lying, you can't do that. Secure systems follow secure design principles. And this is things like having use least privileges whenever possible. You want defense in depth. You want a sound trust model. You want to know where everything's coming in. Have a good threat model. So for example, a secure web application does have HTTPS, and it probably encrypts its data at rest. But it also does other things. It's going to check user permissions, and it's going to make sure it's not running a bunch of services as root. And okay, so I hope everyone has hearing about some little security topics here. And I'm sure I'm going to get lots of angry emails and threats from people, so I can take some of those now.
Question.
One in the back.
What is the benefit of downloading packages over TLS from a central package?
The question is, what is the benefit of downloading packages over TLS? Are you a Debian user?
By default.
I have lots of colleagues around here that use apps, and of course app by default uses HTTP in a lot of distributions. The idea there is it can download over this unencrypted protocol because the packages themselves are signed.
Correct. I never ran through a Linux repository that downloads over HTTPS.
Yeah, so you can, in fact, change the repositories to use HTTPS, and that's a hardening thing that I recommend. I do that on my systems. Some distributions do use HTTPS by default, though. In Debian in particular, it does not. So there was that issue that came out. Was that this year or last year? The one where there was an issue with apt itself where it would reach over HTTP, and then there was a command injection or something in there. Yeah. So that's an example of why HTTPS could be helpful there. What's right?
Yeah, any comments on cloud security?
Any comments on cloud security? Anything in particular? That's a big topic.
Store my data there. That would be
storing all right. So is storing your data in the cloud safer than on premises? Possibly. You have the issue of how's the data getting up there? Are you securing it? Are you uploading it securely? How secure is the physical premises of, say, like the AWS cloud facility? In which case, you can probably assume that it's good because, like I said, I don't think they're being robbed very often. That being said, I don't know that you could say one way or another that one is better. Sticking all your data on, like, say, a hard drive just sitting in, like, your windowsill is obviously not good, but assuming you have good practices on either side, it could be good either way. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Well, like I said, I will be next door in the IoT Village tomorrow if you have any other questions for me, and thanks for everyone attending.